you've got to come across as open and willing to hear all opinions.
Very good. Thank you, Jim, for taking time out tonight to come give us some information.
Tony, we appreciate it. Thank you very much. And thanks, Brad, for giving us an opportunity. Nice to talk to you guys.
You bet, Jim. Thanks for your presentation, and we'll be in touch.
Okay. Moving on to facilities and use of facilities.
The first thing is, as far as the facilities piece, Clint is on, and I've shared his PowerPoint with you, and I'll go through that as well when it goes through things. But he's with BG Consultants, and we've contacted him and Johnny, that was the structural engineer piece of that. We've had a informal walkthrough to go through the buildings, and then to get an idea of what we were looking for. And then so Clint and I were talking, we got into more things that they particularly do as far as the total program, from the structural piece, the pre-bond work, the campaign itself, and their marketing piece as well, and what they do with other groups and have done in the past, and particularly the Manhattan School District, where they've built a long-range facilities plan, but then that drives their bonds and what they're doing in the future with things for that school district. So I will go ahead and pull that up, Clint, and if you wanted to go ahead, I'll let you go. But Clint Hibbs with BG Consultants.
And thank you very much, Brad. I'm grateful for the opportunity to visit with you. I hope you can all hear me well. I love what I do. I am an architect. I did really enjoy Jim's sharing information with you. He's right on. Everything that we're about when we're looking at districts is about communication, and that community engagement is a huge piece. So I've just got a couple of things, just a couple of slides, just to share a little bit about who we are. It's always nice. I really do enjoy the opportunity to engage with you all, even if it is via Zoom, if you will. I'm an architect. I grew up in Kansas, South Central Kansas. I actually grew up in a small rural school district. So I absolutely love just the engagement of the community. We had bond issues that we had to go through and work through as a community, and it kind of really just got my interest peaked in architecture. A little bit about BG. Brad's got us on a slide. We're really focused on being a full service firm. We have architects, interior designers, civil engineers, structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, surveyors. I think that you're already engaged with some facilities assessments, perhaps on the mechanical, electrical side, kind of on energy. We think that's important. Back in 1976, an engineer, a surveyor, and an architect, they got together, thanks Brad, and they had an idea of just like, well, what if we get everybody together on the same page? And they had an architecture student working with them part-time, and they decided to grow into this multidisciplinary firm. So here in the Midwest in Kansas, that's not as common as we might see on the East or West Coast, where you kind of have all disciplines infused together, working together as a team. It's really dynamic. It's really interesting. What that does, I believe, for you and for other districts that we've met with and dealt with, is it means that you have one point of contact. I'm that point of contact, or would be for you. But then I'm able to meet day to day, and generally pre-COVID times, I'm also sitting right next to my colleagues, that are engineers and so forth. Now I'm Zooming with them a lot. You can tell by my background, I'm working remote just because I'm out more often with clients and districts and things like that, just to help keep the team safe at home, if you will, at the office, so they're not constantly getting around different pathogens and things of that nature, I guess. So it's a little bit about our background. If you go to the next slide, if you don't mind, I just want to kind of hit on a couple things. So part one, structural evaluation. Brad kind of reached out to our team. We're familiar with Brad from the past. We're also very familiar with your school district. I was really kind of excited when we walked through the old building for the high school. I actually recall years ago, I'm a beekeeper, and and on the sideline. Haven't been keeping bees real recently just because of some things with the health of bees, but there was a hive of bees that at least we thought were getting into the high school. And so one of the maintenance individuals had called me over, and I went down and looked through the building. We saw there were indeed honeybees inside your high school, but they weren't living there. They were just temporary guests. So I think that was a good find at the time. But being able to walk through, Johnny Clavey and I, he's our structural engineer. He wasn't present here today. He's on personal leave right now, just on vacation with his family. But he's really focused on the structural parts of buildings. We understand that you have some great buildings, some old buildings. You're trying to figure out what are you going to do with those buildings. Are those assets that you're going to carry through with your bond improvements? Are you not? What is the cost to improve and sustain those facilities? How do you make empowered decisions? So what we understand is that you're looking at a couple things for the high school and for the middle school, both at Alma and Paxico. We took a look at those, and if you look at the next slide, this isn't your building by any means, but if you take a look at this graphic, what this is an idea that kind of shows you when we do a structural evaluation, what we're doing is we're not just looking at the building and saying, well, this building looks like it's moving because it appears that the parapet is in a certain condition or there's moisture infiltration coming in. What we want to do is be able to provide you a real in-depth look and understanding of what your buildings are going through right now, today, and what's making them move or not move, what's making them change. And so what's represented here, the idea is arrows, how are your loads going through your building? What we provided you are two basic structural fee elements, and what those look at is coming through with our engineer and architect. We're going to look on site, we're going to surgically look at just those areas that are in the high school. You have by the weight room. We also have some locations, particularly in the, I guess, perhaps, Brad, I'm speaking correctly if I say the middle school, Paxico. Looking at those two locations, we're going to look at the areas where there's some serious inquiries onto how the buildings are stabilized. The next proposal we have within that scope is to go and do a lot more detail on that structural evaluation. Now, if you stay right there, one thing I'd like to kind of bring to the table discussion is I know that there's a little bit of discussion about your master planning efforts. Your district is really unique. It's got some unique challenges. All districts do, and that needs to be tailored. One thing that's really fascinating, as I mentioned, I grew up in South Central Kansas. I grew up on a farm. We dealt a lot with wheat. It was just something that was around me all the time, something I was really familiar with. Well, when we deal with a bond and with a district, here's the issue. There are a lot of ideas out there. Everybody in the community is contributing to that bushel of idea. And so you see here, there's a lot of wheat grains, but there's a lot of contribution that comes together to create a successful crop. At the end of the day, if you want to have a successful bond, you want to have a successful campaign for improvements, you need to understand what your facility needs are. But you need to have it in a way that everybody understands kind of what's going on. If you look at the fundamental element, and this is something that Jim had mentioned, and I do absolutely agree with him. We approach a process with the bond efforts that is maybe a little bit more unique and more tailored than you might see in some of the traditional approaches. We've tailored our approach to this, and I'll explain a little bit why. Because at the end of the day, we need to have consensus. We have all the individuals in our community. How do we get the majority of them to understand what challenges you're having as a district? You've already started working through these things. You have some experience with HDK, some work that they've done. If you go to the next slide, Brad, the question is, how do we realize your vision? Out of all the different ideas out there, all those kernels of ideas, how do we realize your vision? Well, at the end of the day, it's about the master plan. The master plan isn't specifically about the bond. The master plan is about the pathway moving forward, where you are today, knowing where you want to be tomorrow. And so there's three huge components to this. One, and of course, this sounds pretty familiar, but the master planning steps, getting the community involved, doing a lot of research. And so really to kind of culminate what I think really matters, fact finding makes a difference. When you do a deep level facility evaluation, I've reviewed the information that you've had previously, and it's all good information. We go into detail And we really look at what is the condition of your facilities today in detail. What is that going to look like in the future? Then we establish goals with you, and we want to do that with the community at the same time to say, here's the challenge, here's the problem, and give the community an opportunity to give voice to what their thoughts are. And we get a lot of ideas. Remember that pile of kernels of wheat that I had previously shown? Well, the same ideas, when we get involved with the community, they're going to have ideas all over the place. They're going to want to not do anything. They're going to want to do a ton. They want to do various things that are based on their interests. We want to hear every single idea that they have. And we want to be able to share that in a platform that allows them to feel empowered, that they had a voice heard. And that was a little bit about what Jim was mentioning when they do those survey calls and reaching out. Those community forums really do matter. That way we can establish the goals, and then you've already set this stage for success for your capital improvements plan. Then we can go through and evaluate and determine the needs, revisit that with the community, and then focus on concepts for delivery. So if you scroll down there to where we have those numbers, I think they're number 11. Yeah, so the master planning process, again, what we want to do is review where you've been. And this is kind of what our service would be to you. We want to conduct site assessments, and not just a high level site assessment. One of the things that I found, I've worked very closely with a lot of facilities, directors, if you will, with districts. One of the challenges they've had and boards is when they get done with master plans with architects, and I'm an architect, I'm guilty, I'm a proud species, but at the end of the day, what we find is that we need to provide a deliverable that not only helps you with your bond today or an improvement you're going to do, but it needs to be something that your board, that you can, and your facilities team can actually approach when we're gone, when we're not at the table with you, that you can move forward with. That's the kind of level that we've developed and tailored our plan through. And just as Brad had mentioned, we've really used USD 383 most recently with their bond package process. The planning efforts that set up that phase of success with the community was all centered on being able to get down a process that really looked at the facilities so they could determine what they would use, what buildings they wouldn't, and how they would move forward. Again, visioning with the community is a part of that, so we can create some vision. Now, if you go down to the next part, this is the process that you'll typically see. So if you look at this top area that says master planning process, community input, I can actually copy the community input. That usually isn't early on in the process. Typically what we'll have is assessing your refinement, assessing your prioritizing your needs, then developing facility options, talking with the board, coming up with an idea, then going to the community saying, okay, here's what we have as a challenge, here are some ideas that we've come together with. What we want to do is we want to make the community become a part of that process, not to change the direction of your vision for the district, but to allow that voice of the community to be heard early on so they can maintain that success. You're already close, you're right there, just a number of votes away. But if you go down there where we had that second master planning process, community input, we want them up at the beginning. That's something that I enjoy as an architect, really getting them involved with the community, not just once, but getting them in from the very beginning. That's really where the foundation of success is. That's why Jim, before with ASA strategic funding, that's why they get involved, is because they're trying to create that connection. Well, you can do that from the very beginning. You can incorporate companies just like Jim's in that same process, but the architect can be a powerful vehicle for you to really make some headway. Even those who would generally be against this type of work, they understand in the master plan, hey, we have these challenges. What do you think we can do to come up with a solution? So what we're trying to do is understand what the expects from the Board of Education, from the district. What are they looking for? And there's a number of items we can look at. Some of this stuff I think has already been kind of reviewed a little bit with some HDK's work and things of that nature that we can build on. But if you go to that next slide on community engagement, this is really it. It's getting a voice. We want to give a voice to teachers, a voice to the parents, a voice to the students. And what we find, and what I've been finding with a lot of the districts, and not just public, but even private organizations and private schools, is that everybody feels that the students and the teachers and the parents and the board are getting their voice heard. What a lot of them are wanting to feel is that the community in general are getting heard. Even those who may not have children in the school program, in the systems, how can these sites be of value to those communities, even if they're having a different function, or what happens if those schools need to be consolidated in a different location. Now, I want to go to another thing. I'm going to have a word on DNA. I'm going to explain what I mean by that. DNA is about what your building's about. So if you jump on to the next slide, fact finding is really what we need to understand. There isn't anybody or any district that will find there's no way that you can run forward without having a foundation of where you've been. And it needs to be done. We can do this as just a third party perspective. We don't have to be involved in any other virtue work. We'd love to, but we want to give you deep understanding. So the simple truth of the facilities, if you look at that next slide that you have on there, Brad, is that really your districts are working out of buildings. And the simple truth is that your portfolio is ever changing. You have 5 buildings, 5 campuses, if you will. You have so many students, you have so many facility needs. What do you do? I know a lot of you may have seen a movie back in the 80s, I think it was The Money Pit. I'm not gonna hit on great detail. It was a great movie to watch, but it was one of those things where they get into this facility, and you know what? One of the quotes from the beginning of that movie, at least it was on the covers, used to be, if they've got what it takes, it's gonna take everything. They've got to get the work done. Well, our facilities feel like that sometimes. You look at your facilities, you look at the re-roofs that need to be done, you look at your exterior facilities, maintaining those walls. We understand that. That's something that I have done millions of square foot of evaluations over the last 6 years. It's incredible what we've been doing throughout the state of Kansas, and why we've been doing it is because a lot of our entities understand that they need to know their buildings. They need to know them well enough that they can plan ahead before there's problems. One of the challenges you will probably have as a district, I've seen this with a lot of them I've dealt with, is that when you have, say you're working on like a bond or some other effort, a lot of the community says, well, look, you've had these buildings, why haven't you taken care of them? Well, it's not so easy. There's a load-bearing component to every building. We call that the foundation. Well, what we can bring to the table is a real deep level of that foundation for you on where your facilities really are at, so that the community can have a deep understanding of the fact that you have invested in your buildings, and that it takes continued investment to sustain them. And then they can make a determination: do you continue with your existing facilities? Do you expand your facilities? Do you reuse? Do you not? What are the cost implications to that? So the challenge is trying to figure out, what do you do with your facilities? Do they fit your program? Do they not? There was a French actor, he once said this, and it's right there by that pile of rocks: the greater the obstacle, the more glory in overcoming it. That's the challenge you have, is overcoming those unique needs. I'm not going to hit a lot right now on the facility issues, but there's a lot of issues with facilities. If you look at just the National Center of Education Statistics, a lot of incredible information. When we're able to help you get an understanding of really where your buildings are at, not just, well, you need to re-roof, it's going to cost this much, but we can say, look, you have this much square footage of this much roof of this type. What you can understand is that your facilities have a physical function. They also have a educational function where they're actually trying to pull together a needs. You don't need to just adapt to those spaces. You need to really create adequate supporting spaces. I have found that community will rally behind you if they understand that there is a deep understanding of the value of that DNA of building that's in place, with the understanding that you have a plan moving forward with it. So the assessment, well, I would recommend, and one of the things that we have in our proposal for you is to do a deep level inventory where we look at condition, we look at functionality. We take condition to a level beyond what you will have seen in other facility assessments. What that means is that we look at your facilities, we look at the drawings, the plans, but we don't stop there. We meet with the teachers, those who are managing the facilities. We understand, what are the deep issues? Do you have drainage issues? Significant settlement? What you're seeing on the slide that's slowly coming up, where it says plans, notes, history, discussion, this is all historical record document of our efforts working with one school. I think this was Bergman Elementary School recently, just as one example. And it also identifies when they replaced certain products. There's a table under history. You can see a bunch of items in colors. Those identified for us when the school had done minor repairs. We were able to quantify that, so we're not just saying, well, look, you have to do an entire re-roof, so this is how much it's going to be when you master plan. We can actually tailor it so that we can get realistic costs within a 0 to 5, 6 to 10, and 11, 20-year time frame. At the end of the day, we realize that it's your vision that matters, and the community can become a partner in that, whether you're focusing on safer schools, improving your buildings and systems, whether you're going for aligning to today's curriculum, what have you. We know that all matters. And really, I think that the last piece I want to share, as I think on this final slide 29, is that realizing your vision, taking that one kernel, having everybody on the same page, really will allow you to gain that direction of, yes, having agreement of not just your master plan, but anything that you might do as a culmination of that. If you're looking in November to pursue a bond effort, all of these efforts are able to be accomplished timely, and they can be shown in detail. I didn't add in here details specifically, but we go through the process of showing plans. People want to see, they want to not know what just the issues are, but they want to be a process to understand, well, where do we add on to a building here? Or where do we relocate? What's the best place to put a new building or to add, to renovate? And then allowing them to see it, not just talking in square footages and just cost values, but helping them be able to see the buildings so that they can see a floor plan, they can associate where those improvements are. Helps them realize that you've taken all of these components together and really moved forward with a vision. So I want to thank you for that. I can go through more detail, but I just wanted to give you a quick preface, because really we've tailored ourselves to be able to be of service to you. In the proposal I submitted for your consideration, we go through a couple of different scenarios for your consideration. One is a surgical facility needs assessment, structural evaluation, where we go and we calculate the loads in the buildings and what the specific needs are. We also have a second evaluation where, there you go, thank you, where we go into a lot more detail. So the one that says structural evaluation, and there's a complete site building structural evaluation, it's the difference between looking at the areas where there's concern and then looking at the building overall and saying, well, we think overall your building complex is going to be in a good condition. The other component is to look at physical condition assessments. And I think I'd given an update to this, and I apologize, this doesn't seem to have all the updates on there, but we do physical condition assessments where we can just find the details alone. There we go. The complete site building evaluation, and then there's a long-term facility master plan. And so the way this facility master plan comes into play is that we go through, we do the school assessments and the forecasted findings that go into detail. And I would highly encourage you to contact Matt Davis, Tricia Brooke. I can give you several other contacts of individuals that have gone through the process and used this information, not just for their master plan, but for ongoing efforts. Even after, I'm involved with the bond right now with all of USD 283, and they're continuing to utilize efforts we prepared for them during the master planning effort, because the information we provided to them, it's incredible what's happening there. I did put a value for assisting with education specifications and space programming, just if you want to, partly because you may want to define some of those expectations that you'll have just on a spatial need within your educational program. How do you want to tailor your needs specific to SPED programs, Title I and other functions, as well as looking at your long range campus master planning efforts. So these kind of all add in up to a fair value, I think about $59,700. And you can add on to that, or if you don't desire to get involved with that, we can get involved in some of the pre-bond election services. Now, Jim, his company really focuses on those pre-bond election services in a little bit of detail. Our firm is also able to do that. One thing I do want to emphasize is, I'll be honest, we're a mid-sized firm. We're not going to be able to do services for you and just do it for free, if that makes sense. But what we do is, when we go through the process, if you look at the long range facilities master plan, all of that cost in there is part of the traditional planning process with more detail that allows us to go towards a level of service that can allow streamlined momentum as you go into the bond process and as you go into the bond implementation. So once you pass that bond, What we've done is we've set up that there is a certain percentage of work effort that's done where we're actually going to be providing for you not just a pretty visual for people to buy into, but we're going to provide layouts, plans, ideas that everybody can have an understanding of, well, what really is exactly happening with your master planning effort and with your bond effort. Modifications do change and do come into place, but what I've encountered is that in this process, we don't have to reinvent the wheel continuing forward. And so one of the things to keep in mind is that our upfront costs that ranging from that 60 to 90,000, depending on if you do the long range facilities master plan and the pre-bond election services, one or the other. Usually, and I believe it's a little bit lower than that, the value of that, depending on what you want us to do, ranges from $44,000 to $89,000, basically write-off that we take off of the next phase of your project. So it's basically the first step in your actual design project, if that makes any sense, is how we have it set up in our scope of services so that we don't have to charge you again to do preliminary design when it's already been prepared. The structural evaluations, I do want to emphasize, those are separate or in addition to any long-range facility master plan or pre-bond elected services. The reason being is that is about going through numerical calculations of loading as well as with the recommendations of the improvements in the walkthroughs with the contractor on site. I wanted to kind of go through this pretty briefly and pretty quick, so I've really hit it really hard and fast, and I know there's probably a lot of questions. And I just really want to open it up to you now to answer any questions you may have on our scope of services.
So just to clarify, the structural engineering part, the building assessments, those items, that's separate from the long range master plan. Those would be two separate costs.
So that's a great question. So the structural evaluations are a separate cost, whether you do an entire building or portions of the building. Like I identified those, where it's about $8,000 per site for a surgical evaluation, and then $18,000 to $20,000 per site for a full survey. Now, those are structural analysis. The long-range facilities master plan, it goes into detail, and it includes every facility. The one thing that does not include, it doesn't include structural analysis. We'll identify issues, replacement costs of all of your, we affect every system. It just doesn't address how loads are calculated to transfer through your building system. And so the items that I've generally described for the most part are all part of that long-range facility plan effort.
Okay, thank you.
Could you describe sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Could you describe a little bit more detail regarding the difference between a structural evaluation and a complete site building structural evaluation? Is a structural evaluation only portions of the building?
So the two items there, so the structural evaluation and the complete site building structural evaluation, they're both structural evaluations. But the first one is looking at the areas of the high school and at the middle school where we were pointed out there were issues with movement or other items or cracking in the walls. And those look at those sections, those areas of the buildings. We look at the roof in that region of the school, but we don't look at the entire roof at walls that may be on the opposite side of the building, for example, in the structural evaluation. In the complete site building evaluation, structural evaluation, we're looking at every beam, every column, everywhere, from roof down to foundation, just to assess the conditions. We may find in such a condition that maybe there's an existing wall that hasn't shown any settling or any failure, but maybe close to it, and we'd be able to say, look, you can't modify this roof structure by adding another layer of over roofing to it. You would need to maintain, if it's an asphaltic roof, you'd want to maintain an asphaltic roof and not add clay tile to it. Those kinds of things we'd be able to get from a complete structural analysis. We wanted to give you some flexibility in visiting with Brad. I thought in visiting with Johnny that we wanted to give you flexibility knowing that you want to be able to invest in what you need for your facilities. And some of our clients, they only need a select area of their buildings assessed. And others, they say, well, we actually want the entire building structurally assessed. So to clarify, structural evaluation is about calculating loads about part of the building or all of the building, whereas physical assessments, which is part of the long-term facilities master plan, is about looking at the material condition and useful life of all of those conditions in the replacement time periods, not associated with structural loading.
Okay. Thank you, Clint. Is there anybody else had any other questions or? Okay. We appreciate you giving us the information for us to digest and go through, and there's a lot there and to look at and to talk about. But yeah, we appreciate you coming on with us tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Clint.
Thank you.
Just to let the board know that I've contacted 2 other engineers so we can have a comparison in cost for the structural piece of that. So that I've sent information to one that has been recommended, as well as another one that we're getting information to them as well in regards to a bid on the structural piece of it. And then the main difference of when we were talking with Clint was just the fact that the idea that it's a one-stop shop to go through all those things. And then I think one of the things that I had put as a goal for the district had been a long-range facilities plan so that we could have an understanding, as they'd been mentioned, of how long those buildings are, the values of those, and what we could be looking for in the future as people moved on to what things need replaced when, and some of those things. So gives you several different options, and I'm sure we can talk more about those particulars. And once we get the other bids back as far as the structural piece, give you an idea of what those structural pieces are, and then how that could fit together with a possible master long-range plan and or the possibility with the communication piece, how it all fits together regards to that. The other part of that not action item, but information and discussion item was the facilities use piece. We had gotten just a feeler from the Stallions. Youth Wrestling had sent a request and just asked me what I thought about it. And we administratively had discussed it. I'd provided you some of the information in the Friday notes. And to this point, what we are going to continue to recommend is that we have no outside groups, whether there are students or not, to use our facilities for practices and those things. And I get both sides of it. It becomes very difficult when one side is like, well, they're there all the time anyway, there are kids only, but we control what we can control, and that's been the theme from the beginning. And yes, some groups would really follow and do what we ask them to do and disinfect and all those things, but we, quote, can't guarantee all those things. But we do have numbers that are decreasing across the board, and our main purpose as far as the school is to ensure that our students with the activities that they represent the school for are able to do so. And so felt like with the board and with you all to recommend that we continue with our facilities usage as we'd done in our reopening plan. And so unless I hear anything differently, that's what we'll continue to do.
Thanks, Brad. Could I make a general, I guess, a request and comment, I guess. Request being, when you get the information back from those other engineers that you've sent quotes for, could you provide those when you get those prior to the next board meeting, so we can review those and potentially move along a little bit quicker in terms of making a determination of who we might go with?
Sure can. And just FYI too, I've forwarded you all the information that from tonight's meetings. So yeah, I'd be glad to provide that to you. And I know too that, hey, when you get 70 some pages, it's a lot of stuff. So, and I appreciate the conversation, trying to understand too how to separate out what these evaluations are versus master plan versus structural, all that stuff, which is a good thing to be able to look forward to. But yes, I sure will.
And just a general comment to the rest of the board. So I know at the end of, or the beginning of this year, I had sent out an email talking about, or to Brad at least, and I believe he has shared, and we discussed a little bit in the January meeting, but I was able to go and speak with patrons from each one of our communities. I talked to, honestly, I don't even know in terms of the number of people, over 20 people in each one of the communities. And I've shared those experiences, that feedback that I've received. One thing that both individuals talked about tonight regarding research, I think is extremely important. I've tried to do some of that. I think it's going to be very difficult unless we're going to be willing to go out to get that information from large numbers of people. That's going to be difficult for us to do. So I think in finding a solution for the district, I think it's adamant that we either take it upon ourselves to make that commitment, or we look for other means to do that in terms of getting the communication, getting that feedback back from individuals. We've gotten good information from the survey. I think a lot of the information we've gotten, we understand, but at the same time, I think there are some board members that don't feel they don't feel the same in terms of what potential solutions we should be pursuing based upon that feedback. And to fully understand that, I just wanted to add as my opinion that I think it would be very beneficial to have an outside group come in that's a third party that is able to say, these are what the people are saying, this is what they think would pass on a large scale basis, because I completely understand if an individual doesn't believe what I have to say, or maybe I wouldn't believe what another individual have to say about people they've talked to. So I think it's a good idea from a third party perspective to get that insight.
Jim, I would just counter that a bit, that I think that it's important, yes, that we have a bond that will pass, but I think more important that we provide facilities that are workable within our budget going forward. That just because we think that a particular bond would pass, that it's not the right fit for us going forward. Just as he said earlier, we're the only district that has 5 facilities, and we all know that we can't continue that. But is 2 locations correct, or is it really better to have 1? Those type of things. So I think, yes, we want to make sure people are well informed, and we definitely value their opinion, and we want our patrons to be involved, but we also have to do what's best for our district going forward too.
Okay. Brad, is there, getting back to the use, can you remind me, did we have a threshold, merit or something that was solid that we were going to go off of before we planned on reopening 2 outside groups, or was that fluid?
We didn't have a specific, like the gating criteria.
Right.
That
Like
had so many.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. We didn't have specific to that. We just went ahead and said, as far as the reopening plan, that we would look at in the future, but no specific as far as if we're this number of cases or not. We didn't have anything like that.
Okay. I mean, I know you're hearing it just like the rest of us are. There's more and more. Well, there's still a lot of facilities that are not open, and I understand why administration is deciding to what they're how we want to move forward, and it doesn't sound like we have anybody else that wants to that doesn't want to go against that, and that's fine for now. And I also understand what Jim and Kelly are saying, and I think that's what we've kind of been trying to work towards all along, is a plan where we have to have support from our constituents that individually each of us may not think is the total best, and hopefully we can come up with something that merges together that we can move forward, and I would hope at some point we can get closer to unity in this district that we seem to be fighting. So
I agree, Tony. Can I add one more thing?
Yep, go ahead, Kelly.
Back to the facilities use. I'm assuming that, let me start off by saying I fully support the administration's decision on continuing as we have been. But I'm assuming that this is consistent with other districts. We're not alone in having outside people use our facilities right now. Do we know that, Brad?
Yes and no. Some have, and then some have not. And I know that Mission Valley, and talking to them, they've had some for like a bloodmobile or something like that, but no outside groups for practices. Morris County, no outside groups to use their facilities. And then others have, you hear a scattering of yes for some, no for some. And so really, honestly, administratively, it becomes very difficult to try to, we can do it for this, but we can't for that, And then I get it with the people's mind in the same sense, going, well, how can they do it and they can't, and we get into all that. And so administratively, we've discussed it back and forth a lot at a lot of admin meetings, and felt like right now the consistent piece, we've already got it to this point, and we need to continue, because again, the focus is if we can continue to have our extracurriculars for our students, that's what we want to try to do. But like I said, on the other side, I get what they're thinking. Right. I get it. Right.
I absolutely agree. So definitely want to keep our programs going and our kids actually in-person classes. So thank you.
You bet. Great, Kelly.
Okay. Anybody else have anything on this?
Does anyone have any thoughts about the individuals that spoke tonight in terms of consideration?
I did have, I guess to contribute to the conversation, I I feel like I'm echoing kind of everybody's sentiment, but I don't know if we're all saying exactly the same thing. But I mean, I do think having that neutral third party come out and help us do the research and the gathering. I completely agree with Kelly that we need to do what is in the best interest of the district as a whole, and not just go off of what makes everybody feel warm and fuzzy all of the time, because that may not be what's in the long-term range, best interest. But I do think that, and I think that my feeling of this comes from talking with some patrons, but then also just looking at all the feedback from the surveys and everything. I think having that neutral third party kind of removes some of that bias towards who people are talking to, and does maybe help elicit some genuine information from people that they can bring back and present to us to help us move towards what is the best option for our district, whether that's one campus or two campuses. But I think we probably all know that there's a lot of bias and there's a lot of feelings, about this town or that town or this family and that family and all of these things that you hear, and just, so I might go out and talk to somebody and they don't like me, so they're going to tell me one thing, and then they might tell Jim another, or they might tell Kelly another. I think we've all had that experience. And so I do think, while it's costly, and Lord knows I don't know that we have a whole lot of extra cash laying around unless Brad's buried some out back, but I do see a genuine benefit to having a third party be able to come in, do some research, do some marketing, and help it so that the information is not coming from just us, and have people feel some kind of way about us as a board trying to present this information. And so I do see some genuine benefit to that. I liked the plan. I think it was Mr. Colgan presented. I like how he talked about it. I like that they work with some of the smaller districts around. And so because I do think we are a unique district, which he obviously saw in our building situation, but also he does work with the rural communities, and I think so he comes in with an understanding of what is valuable to our rural communities and families. And so I think something like that, if we go with him, or if we go with something like that, I do think it is a necessary tool at this point. That's just my thoughts. So
I'll add to that a little bit, Callie. I agree. The presentation that Jim provided, I think it was well articulated. I think it gives us a good outlay and understanding of what exactly is going to be involved in each level that they go through. So I really liked that myself. I agree with the cost, and maybe we can discuss further on what specifically is included and what maybe more specific costs associated, because it is a pretty big band, between 30 to 55 grand. But at the same time, I think it's something that our district really needs in order for us to get the best understanding as possible as to what the individuals within our district are saying. So I agree with the thought process of Jim with ASA.
I think it could also help just unify by adding that neutral party in. I'm gonna say it again. I think that there's a lot of bias and a lot of feelings that people have, understandably so, and I'm not knocking anybody's feelings, because we are a small community and we are a deeply rooted community with a lot of history. And so, bringing in a neutral third party might actually be something that helps to unify the district, Tony, because, it's like, okay, these aren't people that have a stake in this area or that town or anything else. This is somebody coming in and saying and gathering all of our information and coming up with what they felt like was the best plan, not this group of people from this town or this group of people from this town coming up with what they thought was the best plan. And so I think that some neutrality might actually help bring a little unity. So I don't know. That's my thoughts.
Jerome, I'm interested in your thoughts.
I don't think you are.
No, I really am. I really am.
I heard you say something earlier about getting through some of this quicker, and it doesn't seem like you're acting on that. I really don't have anything to say.
Okay. Thank you, guys. This is a discussion item, but we're going to have more discussion on this item, and more. Sounds like Brad's going to give us a couple other engineers to shop, and yeah. So with that, we will move on to do the spring break. Brad.
Thanks, Tony. Yeah, one thing too, just FYI too, that what Cheryl and I have discussed, and Janice, a budget, an amount in 21-22 budget. We are looking to see what we can do to make sure that we have a budgeted amount, not hidden in the back, Callie, but or buried in the back. But we will hope to have some sense of a budget piece of that to be able to help with that when that expense comes. The other piece just is that the spring break, I don't know if it is a concern. The second Monday is March 8th during the start of spring break, and we could move it to Monday, March 15th if there is a need to do that, and not have to worry about that on the 8th.
I would appreciate moving it, but that's just my vote.
I don't have a preference either way. It's fine with me.
I don't either.
I'm the same way. I don't have a preference. So if yeah, I guess to move on, I guess Callie, if you want to move it, you're going to have to make the motion to move it. Otherwise, it sounds like everybody else was fine with leaving it.
Well, then we'll just let the majority rule. That's fine.
Unless I'm reading that wrong, that's what I thought I heard.
That's fine with me.
I move to move the meeting to the 15th.
I second. Kelly seconds.
It's been moved and seconded to move the meeting to the 15th. Is there any discussion? If not, we'll move on to all opposed, say your name. Okay, motion passed. We'll move it to March 15th. And back to what you started with that, Brad, I would, a budget would be appreciated, so we have an idea of what we're going off there. So, that's the last thing I'll say about that item. Moving on to approve memorandum of understanding with Greenbush.
With the situation next year, there will be, according to KSDE, no remote students as far as they must all be virtual or they must be on site. And there will be cases where you may have remotes for a period of time, when someone is sick for a short period of time, that kind of thing, an opportunity to remote in. But the other thing is that then they must be virtual if they're going to be out. We relatively don't have a lot of students that are remote, but somewhere around 10. So they would have to then go to a virtual school. The virtual school piece, then for us, it would be difficult to have a teacher dedicated to that and do all the things that need to be done with the state to ensure that. Greenbush is offering the virtual school so we can still get money for those students rather than the students say enroll in a Lawrence virtual school or a K-12 virtual school or some other virtual school and we get no money. As long as we have a virtual school and they enroll in our virtual school with Greenbush, then we get $5,000 per each of those students on the budget, not on the FTE. Instead of the 44 base aid per pupil, we get $5,000, and then we pay Greenbush $4,000 for their services for taking care of everything, including a laptop, and then the fact that they would have the teacher and the curriculum to teach them that. Then once that's done, then the students actually, if they stay for 4 years with the virtual school through Greenbush, they get the laptop as a added option. But it gives us an opportunity. If we don't have any virtual, then we are not out anything, but we have to let Greenbush know to approve it so that then it can be approved as a virtual school through KSTE. And so that's why we need to have it done now. And I would recommend that we do that versus trying to go virtual ourselves or lose those students altogether.
I apologize if I missed this. Is there an upfront cost to Greenbush to do that, to contract to have them do that?
No.
Okay. It's only taken out of whatever funding
Correct.
we would get for those students. Okay.
The $5,000 that we get per students on the Form 150, but you must have a virtual school to get that. Mm-hmm. So you just can't get money for remote kids anymore. It would just be the virtual school piece.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, Brad, just sounds like a win for a win-win situation. We're not losing all the money, but our teachers aren't having to teach virtually anymore. And so do you see any problems with this at all? Or
I don't. Again, it's all, I mean, there's going to be things that are going to come up. When talking with Greenbush, if the students don't work out, then they're going to have to come back to us. And so that could be a possible loss of some monies, but we'd still get the $1,000 for them. The other thing would be a scenario if they don't, just like all the principals have gone through with those in remote learning now, you've got to have reliable internet, all those kind of things. And they will go through that in a pre-counseling portion of that and take a lot of those things on. But we're still the school of record. And so there will be some things that will come up, but not to the point of what we have done so far with remote with our teachers.
okay.
One separate question related to the KDSE or KD. I can't say the acronym, but related to this, related to their statement. So we can't go virtual. So that means if we had a snow day, it's not an option to do anything remote just for those days.
No, you still can do that. Okay. You just can't be a long-term type of a remote learning situation. They have to be enrolled in a virtual, because there's, just like in the same sense, Jim, the easiest way I can show as a comparison is if you're sick a day, it'd be the similar type of thing. It doesn't go against the 1,116 hours that KSTE has to have so that you can complete the year. That if you go remote, then those 1,116 hours don't count if you're going fully remote type of a scenario. So you have to have a virtual school.
Brad, do you need, I'm assuming we need to approve this.
Yeah, this is an action item.
So I move for approval. Kelly moves for approval.
Tony seconds. It's been moved and seconded that we approve memorandum of understanding with Greenbush for offering virtual school. Is there any other discussion? If not, all those that are opposed, say your name, please. Motion carries. Okay. Bus bids.
We let bus bids out. We opened them Thursday at noon, and we have had $70,000 in capital outlay was budgeted for the purchase of a bus. We did receive 2 bids, Midwest Transit and American Bus, for 71 passenger buses that have immediate availability, as well as meets all our specifications. So the low bid is from $55,925 from American Bus for a 2017, and has somewhere around 25 to 29,000 miles. So we feel like that would be our recommendation, to accept that bid from American Bus.
Brad, was there anything that the other company's the one with the 3 buses, correct? Or is this?
That is correct.
Okay. Was there anything about them that made them any better, more? I mean, I noticed, yeah, they were like what, 55 to 68,000, if I remember right, roughly.
Yeah, they were more. They were 58 to 60,000. Mm-hmm.
But this is the one. I mean, this seems that in the past, I know they've talked about Bluebirds, which I assume that's, if I remember right, that's what this is, and that's kind of quality wise, that's probably why you guys are, for the dollar, you're thinking this is the best route.
Yes, and I can real quickly, too, just a second here, if you bear with me, I'll pull that up, showing you the information of it here. So yeah, this bus, they're 2017. There's the 71 passenger Bluebird, 10 days after the paperwork is completed. There's the information. It includes our REI Kansas system, camera system already in it. We did add the underbody, which is the luggage rack, that then could be used for when we take it to activities and games. Cummins motor, 2017 Bluebird. And then these others are similar, that are from the Midwest Transit. They're 17s as well, 72, 71 passengers, and 2017, 2018. The 2018, same international seating capacity, et cetera, and approximate miles, more miles for 58,000 and more miles for 60,000. And then the 18 is 67, so considerably more for that. And those were available as well now.
Is there any type of warranty that comes with these? Sorry.
Yes, there is. The warranty piece. I'm sorry, it's in his other presentation, the information, but yes, there is a warranty piece of that. And I can't give you the specifics from that, but yes, there is a warranty piece.
I moved to buy the bus from American Bus.
Kelly seconds.
It's been moved and seconded that we buy a bus through American Bus. Is there any discussion? If not, all those opposed, say your name. Motion passes.
And just to be clear, that was Jerome that motioned that, right?
Correct?
Right.
Hey,
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, moving on to Cotton O'Neill Athletic Training contract.
Cotton O'Neill, we've utilized their services at least, I know the 6+ years that I have been here, and may have done that before, but they specifically are help with come in and do athletic training things on site for our student athletes. It's $1,800, the same cost that they had annually, and we have that budgeted. We've utilized it for the past 6 years. The contract difference for this one is now they would like to place an advertising sign within our gym with Cotton O'Neill training services. But I think that there was a question about some of the things, them being games and some other things, and I believe Jan had answered those in Friday notes.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, Brad, that they're keeping the same rate to put a banner up?
That is correct.
Is there any way to negotiate? Can we get a little more out of them, or is that just what we got?
I don't know specific. I mean, we can get more out as far as being in games and doing those kind of things, but it then will cost you more.
Right. I mean, I've seen banners in other gyms. I understand what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
Would it be possible just a brief iteration of the services we get from Cotton O'Neill related to this contract?
Jan, are you available to discuss that?
I am, but I have some background noise going on right now that I can't exactly figure out how to shut off. So I had summarized that in an email to you, but basically that includes Brad Perry coming out 2 times a week. He sees whoever is signed up, and he provides training programs to get them back. And continues to see them through. For example, we had an injury on Friday night at Rossville, and though he wasn't there and they didn't have a trainer available, I know that Brad saw them the next day. He made an appointment with them and saw them the next day, and he doesn't really have to do that. So unless there are any specific questions about what other services are provided, no, they don't come to games. Sorry. They don't come to games, but that is available for an additional charge.
Do you know approximately how often we've used them?
We use them every week.
So they come to the school every week and work with students?
Twice a week.
I didn't realize we had that many injuries.
We also utilize him at the junior high as well. He'll schedule and come by there if on an as need basis.
I move to approve the Cotton O'Neill athletic training contract.
I second it. Tony seconds. It's been moved and seconded to approve the Cotton O'Neill athletic training. Is there any more discussion? If not, all those opposed, say your name. Not hearing any, motion passes. Okay, now moving back to declare surplus Paxco Middle School to be sold. Includes stipulation that if be sold that another entity that competes with our mission of educating students.
So I want to discuss this a little further before we had actually made that confirmed, partially because I wanted to have a little discussion about the fact that this is this was funded and created using taxpayer funds, and I think that being the case, I think it would be good to have a discussion about potentially maybe turning it over to maybe the city of Paxico for use as a community center. And I would like to get the feelings of other board members on that.
Jim, do you mean turned over, like just given to the community of Paxico, or do you mean
at least offered
to buy?
At least offered to the community. I was thinking in terms of making that an option for them if they would so choose to utilize it as such, and if not, then if they didn't have interest, then putting it out to bid.
Brad, has the city reached out to you at all with any interest?
No, and I haven't reached out to them either. I did ask the superintendent listserv about how others that had sold buildings, and also Kansas Association of School Boards Legal, to make sure we contract-wise put correct information. And so that was that piece of the stipulation about not sold to another entity that competes with our mission of educating students. Not to have that in the middle of our district. Then as much what Jim said about it being a taxpayer funded, continue to have that piece of that. And then they gave several different options. They used a realtor through a bid process, et cetera, for a short period of time, then have it auctioned off, or have sealed bids, whichever, either of those. And if you want to be concerned, or people have a concern about the value, we could have a local real estate person determine a point as far as a price of value. So, but no, I have not reached out to the city of Paxico to this point, nor have they gotten in contact with us.
Brad, I don't have the printed copy in front of me, I'm sorry, of the agenda for this item, but I was just thinking that we should move to try to sell it, and then I guess if the city had an interest in it, they should contact the school about that.
If we move to sell it, it would have to be sold then to the city, I would presume, correct?
No, I mean, I'm not going to speak for Kelly, but I'm assuming what we're trying to do is with the stipulation that we could try to sell, if the city would have first.
Well, I'm just saying, yeah, I'm saying we should see if there's interest. Is there interest by any party? At this point.
And the one thing that you can take action on this evening would to declare it surplus. And then we can, dependent upon that just being that portion of the motion, and then we can contact the city to see if there's any interest in it, and then move forward with either the opportunity with the realtor and or auctioned or sealed bids.
Which declaring it a surplus was all we were doing in the consent agenda, correct? We were not making a motion to sell it yet, because we were still going to do research that we have talked about prior of getting a value on it through realtor or auctioneer or some way, so we have something to go off of, a hard number to move forward with. Is that, I thought that's where we were on this.
In the consent agenda, it says declare surplus Paxico Middle School to be sold, includes stipulation that it not be sold to another entity that competes with our mission. But I move to declare Paxico Middle School as a surplus.
Is there a second?
Kelly seconds.
It's been moved and seconded to move Paxico Middle School to be categorized as surplus. Is there any other discussion? If not, all opposed, say your name. Not hearing any, motion passed. Okay, moving
And
on.
I'll go ahead and contact the city of Paxico, correct? To see if they have an interest.
Correct. That's what, yes, that is what it sounds like we would like.
Okay.
Okay, moving on, Brad, to personnel. Was there, I seen you were, in your notes, you'd like an executive session here?
Yeah, 15 minutes should be plenty.
So,
And what I'll do is I'll put Cheryl and the principals in a waiting room.
okay,
And Josh, you'd also be in the waiting room.
so can I read this just like it is on personnel? Would that be a motion that would work?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm gonna move to go into executive session, non-elected personnel exemption under COMA to discuss an individual employee's performance for 15, is 15 what you need?
Yes.
15 minutes to discuss hiring a pre-K through 8th grade counselor.
No.
Do I have a second?
I'll second. Callie seconds.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to go into executive session to discuss a pre-K through 8 counselor. Is there any other discussion? If not, all opposed, say your name, please. Not hearing, motion passes.
I'm back in.
Okay, I got them all.
Okay. So, we're on personnel. I would move to approve personnel with the additions from the beginning of the meeting as stated here.
I'm sorry,
I have a
I
question.
didn't, since I was not here at the beginning of the meeting, can you tell me what the additions were?
It was resignation of Colby Harris, correct?
That is correct.
And that was the only one, correct?
Correct. And that's at the end of the school year.
Right, I just wanted to make sure, I knew that one, I just wanted to make sure to see if there was any other ones prior to the meeting tonight. Thank you.
Understandable. I still need
I have a question.
Oh, Drums, go. Go ahead, Drum.
Will there be no executive session to discuss extending the principal contract?
You could sure move for one, I guess.
We're in the middle of a motion right now.
Well, I don't have a second, so it's a failed motion, I guess you could say. So if you would like, because I didn't get a second, you could sure, and I will call it that.
Do you think I can make a motion right now? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, because I didn't get a second for mine. So go ahead.
I move to go into a 5-minute executive session to discuss personnel exception under comment to discuss an individual's employees employees' performance.
Second.
For how long? I'm sorry, I did not catch that.
He said 5.
Jim second.
It's been moved and seconded to go into executive session again. I'm sorry I don't have that in front of me, or else I would re-say it. All those opposed, say your name. Motion pass.
For how long, and do you want me involved?
5 minutes, correct, Jerome?
5 minutes. And yes, please.
Okay,
Yes.
and thank you, and I'll go ahead and then, you guys, just a second here real quick. I'll put you in the waiting rooms. Okay, yep, they're all in.
Okay, we're back in regular session. So we're still on personnel. I'll attempt again. I make a motion to accept personnel with the addition of the resignation of Colby Harris, as stated, or as listed here on the agenda.
I second. This is Callie.
It's been seconded to accept the personnel as it is on the agenda. Is there any discussion? If not, all opposed, say your name. Hearing none, motion passed. Okay. Superintendent Board Members Forum. Brad.
I'm sorry. Just the numbers of vaccines 2 to 3 weeks out. We're still in phase 2. Those percentages around 78% yes of our staff. We're trying to have them on Friday afternoon, so we wouldn't have to worry about people missing work. If there's any symptoms and have one substitute, county's been great about willing to come to the school and help us out and go to different locations to take care of those things, so we wouldn't have to have the substitutes and being out of school and those type of things. So they've been very good about that. Other than that, I think that's about it.
Sorry, I guess I got to turn my mic on. Okay, thank you. Jim.
I don't have anything else this time.
Callie.
I don't have anything else.
Jerome.
Me?
Yes, sir.
Good job tonight, Tony.
Thank you. Kelly.
Nothing for me, thank you.
And I don't have anything either. So if I can get a motion to adjourn, I'd appreciate it.
Kelly moves to adjourn.
I'll second. Kelly and Tony seconds. It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All those opposed, say your name. Motion passes.
Thank you very much, everyone. Be safe, and we'll see what tomorrow brings, but it's not looking real good. So with the negative wind chill in the morning, probably a 2-hour delay, just FYI. For anyone to talk.
And Brad, I know that this morning was hard. I could testify. I was on the road at 6:45, and between 6:45 and 7 o'clock, it changed drastically. So I'm sorry about having to make that call, but yeah.
It did, and I appreciate that.
It was quick, so I know the road was better at 6 than it was at 7. So
yeah,
just thank you for keeping our kids safe as possible.
Yeah, exactly. It's unfortunate, just like in other these situations, it's an inconvenience versus a safety. And so I'm sorry about the inconvenience, but if we can keep people safe, that's what we want to do. So appreciate that. All right, you guys take care. Have a great evening. Thanks. Bye.
Good night.
Everybody stay safe.
Stay warm.